What's up again, everybody? It's time to review the X-Force, the Uncanny X-Force team pack, and I am not going to be doing this review alone. I've got a super special, super secretive guest, the one, the only, the Twitch master of Dice Masters. This is Ross Foster.
Heyo.
What's up, Ross?
Oh, not a whole lot.
How's it going?
It's going well. It's going well. Pretty pumped about these this release. The campaign box and the 2-packs are pretty fun.
So if you don't know Ross's work, Ross is living over there on Twitch with a side gig on YouTube, running the Tuesday night weekly Dice Arena, which is a bunch of casual tournaments with varying rules and stipulations for team construction. Super, super cool. I highly recommend checking it out. It's on Tuesdays, and you can find it at...
You can find us on Facebook at the Weekly Dice Arena, or you can find any of those posts in the Dice Masters Unlimited Facebook group or the Discord. The Twitch link is twitch.tv/FinalRossBattle.
Which is infinitely better than Super Smash Brothers Wii U.
That's right. Our past life. In our past life, we streamed some Super Smash Brothers, but we've conceded that battle.
You've seen the light, is what you mean to say.
I've seen the light, and it really, the target market was much too small, especially years after that game has dropped.
So we're going to be rating these cards on an A through F ranking system. A being the best possible rank a card can get, F being the worst possible rank a card can get. And if you want a breakdown of those rankings, you can see the previous ranking video that I did with Mr. Ben Said Scott, but I'll give you just a quick rundown. The A cards are the nationals and worlds level cards. These go on to competitive teams. These are things you don't bring to a casual tournament night because people will hate you. A B card is a really, really fun win condition or really powerful control tool that fits right at home in those semi-competitive teams. It might be something really fun to build around as well. A C card is one of those just fine cards. These slot perfectly onto limited teams or draft nights. These are great pickups on draft. They're also found a lot on those semi-competitive teams as a way to keep the team fresh and fun. They are all just fine and playable. The D cards are cards that can be played, they can be messed around with, but oftentimes there are just better versions of said card that are either cheaper or slightly more effective. You could definitely take these out of the binder, but you may find that you're going to be putting them back in the binder pretty soon. And the F cards are cards that will go into the binder and they will stare out longingly, wishing to be pulled, but never to be done, unless you just wanted to make a joke team. These are the memeiest of all cards, and we all have a good chuckle at their expense. Would you agree with that?
I totally would. It's the ones that you only have to organize once. You know, they're always in their spot in the binder, and they're really just good for their subtitles.
That's right. All right, you ready to get this thing going? We are going to start with Cable Body Slide. Cable's the first character in this team pack. Cable Body Slide is a 5-cost bolt character with the X-Men affiliation, a 132, 233, 255 stat line. He's got Infiltrate, so when he pushes and is unblocked when he's attacking, he can come back to the field zone and deal 1 damage to the opponent. But he's got this secondary text line that says, when Cable uses Infiltrate as the keyword, deal 1 extra damage for each other non-sidekick character die that attacked this turn. Would you like to start us out? Would you like to do the honors? Tell us what you think about this card, Mr. Ross Foster.
Well, interesting. I'll just talk about the ability first. Infiltrate, I think, is good. I unfortunately think there are better Infiltrate characters on lesser costs. So there's 3-cost and 4-cost Infiltrate characters that I think are just better than this. One plus side I like about this card is that the secondary part of the ability, deal 1 extra damage for each other non-sidekick character die that attack this turn. So I'm glad that it counts die instead of characters that attacked, because that would definitely make this even worse of a card.
Totally agree. Yeah, that would be like a backbreaker for this card, which is already not, in my opinion, a very good card. I think this, it's a 5-drop that has really poor fielding costs and an Infiltrate ability when it's most likely always going to be blocked. Like, as a 5/5, it's very unlikely that your opponent is ever going to leave this unblocked, and The infiltrate really makes that even more poor because obviously they know you can just pull it back. It's just a really strange combination that doesn't really seem to work. The secondary text, like you said, makes it a little bit better in the sense that if you're looking at like an average, you're probably pushing this alongside like 2 extra character dice that are not sidekicks. So if this is unblocked, then it can come back and deal 2 or 3 maybe at tops for like a good average, and that's kind of cool. I think that's what saves it for me from being a totally poor, totally terrible card. I gave this card a D. What about you?
I gave it a D minus.
Yeah, not a very good one. Not a great way to start. We should have started with a better card.
It'll get better, I promise.
Curse you, alphabetical order. Cable, Psionic Blasts, another 5-drop bolt version of Cable. This one says, when Cable is blocked, deal damage equal to Cable's level to each character die blocking Cable. So originally, I hated this card, and I hated it purely on the basis that when you just look at it by itself in a vacuum, it sucks. Like, this card is pretty bad. It's a 5 cost that, it can deal like 1, 2, or 3 to whatever's blocking it. But just because it does that, even if it KOs whatever was blocking it, it's still blocked, so it doesn't do anything. Yeah, maybe you give it Overcrush alongside of it, and then it's slightly better. But I kind of hated that. I thought it was an F card. But then I started thinking about it, just like a couple of minutes ago, actually. And I thought, combo potential. This is a lot more fun when put together with things. So, like, giving it Overcrush and making multiple things block it is pretty good. But you could even get crazier and you could like run the 4-cost Madam Web that says pay 2, force everything to block her, and then swap her out with like Nowhere for this guy because Nowhere, swaps up from 4 to 5. That would be pretty cool. And then he would deal like 1, 2, or 3 to all of their blockers, to all of their dice, like so it KOs all sidekicks no matter what, and it KOs like low defense characters. Is that good? Like, no, it's really not very good for investing what is it, like 9 or 10 or something. That's not great. But is it fun? Yeah, it could be. So there you go. I still give this card a pretty low rating of a D, but it's got some combo potential that makes it at least fun to mess around with.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, recently there's been a lot of cards and abilities that have said things like, when this character attacks, everything must block it. Or there's been a lot of blocking manipulation recently. And I gave this card a D minus simply because there's a lot of other blocking manipulation cards that are better than this right now. I think his ability dealing damage to the blockers is fine, but I think generally the things that are going to be blocking Cable are going to die anyway. I just think that it doesn't really fully make sense. Again, I like if it did have Overcrush, I think that'd be pretty cool. And for his fielding costs and his stat line, just didn't really line up.
Yeah, the stat line makes it even worse because like on a level 1, a 3/2, whatever is blocking it is likely to trade with it unless it takes 1 damage and then dies, which is ridiculous. So most anything that blocks this on a level 1 is just going to trade and make you pay 1, 2, or 2 to field it again. So it's not a very good card in general, which is why it was very close to an F for me. But, there it is.
Yeah, I would say even at a 4 cost, this is still it's still a D card for me, probably.
Well, speaking of Cable at a 4 cost, we have X-Force Team Leader. This is a 4 cost version that has Energize, and Energize is the new keyword from this team pack. Energize will trigger when you roll this die onto its double, in this case, bolt face. So if you roll a double bolt and you keep that during the roll and re-roll, or if you just roll a double bolt on this die during like the main step, something pulls it from your bag and you roll it, something like that, then you get to use the Energize effect. And this one says spin all of your active character dice up 1 level. And then it says if you have any active character dice with Energize as the keyword, then Cable is free to field, which is really, really good in comparison to all of those other terrible fielding costs that you're always going to have to pay. So what do you think about this card?
So I like Energize as a keyword, just generally. I think it adds a whole nother facet of team building, and I think it adds a whole nother decision you have to make in terms of, do I keep this on double energy or do I roll it again, try to get character face? For this card specifically, spin all of your active character dice up 1 level is super fun, especially having the X-Men affiliation with a lot of the older X-Men cards with their Awaken abilities. So I'd say it's usable, and I think beyond that, it's just sort of okay. I'd say it has a spot on some very spinny teams. If your team really starts taking off when they spin up, I'd say it's a slot in, and it helps that those are a lot of X-Men characters. But otherwise, I still think it's just sort of average or even below average. I gave it a C.
Yeah, I am exactly right there with you. I think it is average or a little bit below average. The positives to this, though, are the fact that it fits onto one of those teams that you just described. If you need something that's not a global that spins your characters up, or that's not an action die that spins your characters up, if you're avoiding global hate cards that your opponent might play, or action hate cards like Scarlet Witch that your opponent might play, this is a way to spin up your characters without playing any of those. Plus, it nets you a couple energy when you do it, which is kind of interesting. It also, I like the fact that it pushes the energize keyword to be sort of a team build mechanic, because this doesn't require you to put one on it because of that secondary ability, but it does highly encourage you to put another energized character on this team alongside this, so that you can at least field this for free. And I think because it's a 4 cost, it makes this an easier reach than all of those 5 cost versions we just saw. So I gave this a C-. This teetered between C- and D+ for me, just because it's like right there as something that could fit onto one of those teams, but there are better options. This is the only option, really, to my knowledge, that spins all of your characters up without being in action in the game. So for that reason, I bumped it up to a C- and say that it's fairly playable. I'm pumped for this next one. Are you ready?
I'm so ready.
Let's move on to Danny Moonstar. This is Cheyenne. This is a 2-drop mask character, X-Men affiliated, 011, 021, 122 stat line, which is very low for just in general for cards. That's like a 1-drop stat line. It's got the keyword infiltrate, just infiltrate. Do you like infiltrate by itself in this format? What do you think?
When infiltrate was first dropped, what was that, in Guardians?
Yes.
I think. So when infiltrate first dropped, I was very confused about what it meant, and I didn't even realize there was a window that was triggered by, essentially it was a win unblocked window. But I think infiltrate is good. I haven't seen it work in a while. I don't know the last time I've seen a competitive infiltrate team beyond Super Rare Angela from Guardians of the Galaxy.
I can tell you exactly when I saw it. The most recent time I saw a competitive infiltrate team was 2017, right after Guardians released, right before Tomb of Annihilation came out. I guess it was right before X-Men First Class came out. That was the last time I saw a competitive infiltrate team work because of Cosmic Cube. So there you go.
There you go. So, I mean, in terms of just the keyword infiltrate, it's not super exciting to me, only because I feel like there hasn't been that one piece to like make infiltrate work like Cube was before it was banned. It's just always been one or two turns too slow to really make a difference. It's an ability that is 100% dependent on your opponent's decisions and your opponent's board state, which is, if you can't manipulate it, then it's usually a lesser ability than something you can. So her having just infiltrate as her ability, not ultra exciting to me. Her affiliation is good. In a lot of competitive teams, you are looking for a quality 2-cost mask to put on your team for mask globals. Maybe infiltrate just becomes the icing on the cake for this card. I do realize that she has 2 other cards which fit the same bill of 2-cost mask. But I could see this being played in terms of maybe you just go like a big entrance team with the Kree soldiers with infiltrate and this with infiltrate, and you just try to have a super wide field and make it work that way. I don't know. I'm ready for someone to impress me again with infiltrate.
I could see this being picked up in a draft setting, just because you need a 2-drop and because it's a mask character. The infiltrate in draft is a little bit more effective because things are a lot more constrained in draft. I could see this maybe making an infiltrate team just because it's casual and low drop. That being said, that doesn't make it very impressive for me. So I give this a C. What about you?
I gave it a C as well. Pretty middle of the road, especially considering her other cards.
Speaking of her other cards, let's move on to one that's a little bit more exciting because I'm ready to talk about. Let's talk about Empathetic Illusion Casting. 2-drop. Again, they're all 2-drops, which is awesome. This one says, when Danny Moonstar is blocked, re-roll the blocking character die. If it rolls an energy face, place it in the use pile and deal 2 damage to its controller. If it rolls a character face, it remains blocking Danny Moonstar on its new level. What do you think about this one?
This card is incredible if it works the way that I hope it works. So it's when she's blocked, you re-roll all the blockers. This is the way I'm reading it. Re-roll all of the blockers, any of them that roll energy face, place them in the use pile and deal 2 damage per die to its controller. That is not the card text. That is the way that I hope.
That's the way you want it to play.
Exactly.
I see where you're going.
So if it was the case that she, pending she gets blocked by multiple things, then all of those things get re-rolled and damage is dealt per die. This is an incredible card. The fielding costs are fantastic for cycling this. As I said earlier, there's a new abundance of ways to get things multi-blocked. And I mean, even for a 2 cost, just blocking, your opponent's not going to want to take 2 damage over and over and over again, especially if you have a few of these cycling. I just think the ability matches the stat line matches the cost. I'd say this is going to be pretty darn good. I gave it a B+.
Yeah, I agree. This is pretty darn good. Just putting this with a force block, it's a 2-card combo and it's super solid. And yes, if you combine this with something like Doomlance from the previous set, which when you attach it or play it on this Danny Moonstar and then push, all of your opponent's stuff has to attack or has to block the attacking Danny Moonstar, at which point you can then just re-roll everything, and if any of those come up, they go to use, then you just get to deal 2, plus any damage that you deal from the Doomlance. That would be a pretty sweet 2-card combo for a net 6 that you're paying to get this out, because you're usually not fielding this with cost unless it's on level 3. That is not a bad win condition in general. That's not bad at all. I gave this a B.
It has the potential to be ridiculous, not necessarily by itself, but with some other things that are pretty popular right now. I mean, if you think the alternative is to play the Riddler from the Justice Box and Yellow Lantern Ring, I mean, that's a 6 cost and a 2 cost together to do the exact same effect, essentially, in terms of damage anyway.
It's a 6 cost and like a 3 cost. You're talking about the one that does that similar effect to Doomlance?
Right. So the Yellow Lantern Ring would say something like, any blockers this turn are re-rolled and 2 damage is dealt for everyone that rolls energy. I mean, it's essentially the same.
The last one is Danny Moonstar Special Arrows. Again, 2-drop. This one says, while Danny Moonstar is active, at the beginning of each of your opponent's turns, name a non-sidekick die. If that opponent draws 1 or more copies of that die, deal 1 damage to that opponent. I like this card, and I liked this card as a C+ because it was cheap and it was just sort of reliable. Everyone can figure out what's in each other's bags because that's legal. You can just ask. There's not a ton going on besides that, but it's like reliable damage each turn.
I agree. I initially did not like this card as much, and I feel like it could be just, after reading the previous card, this one is just not as good. But I think in a vacuum by itself, there is only one Danny Moonstar, and it's this one. I think it's okay. Like you said, it's reliable. I really like that it's a when active ability. You can name a new die every turn. So pending that your opponent's bag is fairly thin, you could be pretty accurate a lot of the time. Also, there's a lot of mechanics recently for you and your opponent to draw dice outside of their roll and reroll step. So I imagine that this would still trigger anytime that turn that they draw one of those die, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, that is very cool.
I hated it at first. I initially had it down as a D+, but I think in terms of, again, in a vacuum, maybe in a draft, just on a regular old, partially cloudy day, I think this is more like a C.
I do also think that the fact that you can have your opponent draw dice during their step and it still triggers is pretty cool. It does remind, I love the naming something new each beginning of my opponent's turns, because it reminds me of the old Constantine, the super rare Constantine. I don't know if you were around back when that was like a big thing, but that card was super cool, and it's nice to see like a little tiny throwback in mechanics to that card, and it reminds me how terrible I am of that, remembering that ability. So I'll have to use like a token or something to remind myself.
I was just getting into the game when Constantine was big, and more often I was playing with the Lockjaw that has a similar timing window of naming. And then most recently, there's a Target Lock works very similar way, I think, which maybe this in conjunction with Target Lock would be kind of cool. I don't know, but deal damage and they have to skip that die that turn. That's pretty cool.
That would be pretty sweet, combining those two. And Target Lock was what, only 2 or was it 3? I can't remember.
I think it's a 3 cost.
That's a cool combo. I like that. So this has combo potential. There you go.
Solid C.